This video is going to be taking a situation, identifying whether it is an independent or a dependent event. First thing we're talking about is a compound event. A compound meaning more than one is going to consist of, as it says, two or more events. These events can either be dependent or independent. Your independent events, A and B, are independent of the probability of event A occurring does not affect the probability of B. So these two are completely independent events, independent of each other, and one does not affect the other in any way, shape, or form. One event occurs, and then another one does, and they have no effect on each other. The dependent, on the other hand, they're going to be dependent if the probability does affect, if they do affect each other. So what happens with probability A is going to make a difference as to what could happen with B. So let's look at some examples to see exactly what this means. So example number one, we have a coin is tossed. Then a coin is tossed a second time. You have to ask yourself, the second time I flip that coin, what I got on the first flip, is that going to make a difference what I'm going to get on the second flip? No, they have absolutely no correlation here. So this is going to be an independent event. And we do want to make sure that we are explaining. And the reason why is these are, well, I guess they're two different coins. We have two separate coins. Two completely separate coins. Even if it was one coin, it still would not matter. Example number two, during class presentations, each student must present once. A student is chosen to present first. Then a second student is a student to present after that. Some people could debate on this, but this would be a dependent event. The reason why is because how one student performs, so the first student performs, could have an impact on the second person. If they do really well, the second person can get really nervous. If they didn't do very well, then that second person could have more confidence and get out there and just, do real well on that. So I'm going to write that down. It's going to pop up here in a minute. So the reason why is because how the first person performs can affect and make a difference on the second person. Okay, so make sure you pause and write that down. You need these explanations to help you out. Example number three, Wednesday's lottery numbers and Saturday's lottery numbers. Well, how are Wednesday's lottery numbers going to affect what Saturday's lottery numbers are going to be? Because you still have all the same exact numbers. So here we have independent. And the reason is because you have two completely separate days. Even within the same day, it wouldn't matter as long as all the same numbers are being used. They're not going to affect each other. And we'll see that here in a minute. Example number four, excuse me. A card is selected from a deck of cards. And here's the big thing we need to highlight, and put back. The second card is selected. When the first card is selected, you have 52 cards to choose from. It could be any of those 52. If we put the card back, we have the exact same 52 cards to choose from the second time, meaning the second draw is not affected at all. We still have the exact same 52 cards to choose from. So this is going to be independent. They do not affect each other. And we'll put on here all the cards are still available. Okay, we still have all 52 cards available for the second draw. Example number five, we are talking about Tim's going to take his SAT on Saturday and then the ACT on Sunday morning. Okay, scoring a 1350 and a 25 respectively, meaning he got a 1350 on the SAT and then he got a 25 on the ACT. These two events are completely independent of each other. Okay, they're two completely different tests, two completely different days. And it doesn't say that he saw the score. If he saw the score on the SAT and he didn't do so well, I can see that impacting and affecting the ACT. But just one day after the next, two completely different days, two completely different tests. So these are going to be independent of each other. And we just leave it as one of those. We have two separate tests. So it's not like, oh, we got these questions that we got to answer, and then, oh, I know what I did wrong. Let me go get them right this time and take the same test. That would be dependent. But in this case, we have two completely different tests. All right, number 6. Alyssa's basketball team is in the Final Four. If they win, they play the championship game. So the big thing here is that if they win. So whether they go to the championship game or not is going to depend on if they make the Final Four. Okay? So you see how I said that. Going to the championship game is going to depend on if they win the Final Four. So here, these are going to depend. They're going to be dependent. The second event does depend on the first event. So here we could put exactly what I said. You know, we could just say going to the championship depends on if they win the Final Four. Right? So please pause it and write down your example, or your explanation, so that you have that in your notes. Number 7, in a bingo game, the first ball called does not appear on your card. The next ball called does appear on your bingo card. So think about bingo. Whenever you have one of these balls come out, you draw it out, you call out the name or the number, whatever it is, you don't put it back. So what ends up happening is, when it's not put back into the whole entire thing of bingo card or bingo balls, you now have less of those bingo balls to choose from. You have less options, less numbers. So the second number drawn will depend on what the first one is drawn. Okay? So here we've got dependent. The biggest thing here to remember is we don't have all of the options we did the first time. That's clear dependency right there. Okay, we don't have as many options, therefore we have dependent because we have one less. So here we'll write that the ball was not replaced. So we have one less option. Okay, we don't have the same amount, like with the cards earlier. We had 52 cards. We put it back. We still had all 52. Now we don't have, let's say there are 50 bingo balls in there. Well, now once one's drawn, we don't have 50 anymore. We have 49. So it is going to be dependent. Number 8, you roll a 6-sided die twice, and you get 5 for both outcomes. This is going to be completely independent. Because if you think about it, does the second roll really depend on the first? No, you still have all six sides. So none of the sides have changed. So you still have the exact same probability. And when you have the same probability, you have independent. So here we'll just put on here we have 2 separate rolls. Number 9, a basketball player makes two free throws, making the first but missing the second. So this will be independent because what happens on the first will not affect what happens in the second. They're still shooting from the same line. They're still shooting the same ball. We have 2 completely different throws. We put 2 separate throws. Number 10, from a bag of green and blue marbles, you randomly take one out. Then, without replacing it, you take a second one out. Let's highlight that. Without replacing it. That's the huge thing. That will always be dependent. You do not put something back, like in the bingo. Okay? You do not put it back. It will always be dependent. You do put it back. It's always independent. So here we'll put dependent. And the reason is not replaced. The not replaced is the big part of dependent. Okay? And that's really honestly all we have to write. Okay? Once you draw one, you don't put it back. You have one less of those marbles to choose from. If you draw a green one, you now have one less green. The probability of green has gone down. Number 11, throwing 3 darts. The first hits the center of the target, the second dart misses, and the third dart also misses. Again, these are 3 completely separate darts. Even if it was the same dart, we have 3 completely separate throws. So they are not going to impact or affect each other. So here we will have independent. And the reason why is not only do you have 3 separate, sorry about that, darts, but you also have 3 separate three separate throws. I really only need one of those to explain. All right, number 12, a small lake is populated with black bass and carp. While fishing, the first catch is a bass, the second catch is a carp. This is like the marbles. They did not throw the first catch, that bass, they did not throw it back in, which meant there was one less fish to choose from, so the probability of catching a bass went down because there was one less there. So now we've got this dependent event happening. So we can just write on here dependent and just put one less fish in the bank, or in the lake, sorry, one less fish in the lake. So a big thing to take away here is to make sure that if you're able to say, well, the second does depend on what happens the first time around, or whatever in that situation, like with the Final Four game. If you're hearing yourself saying, well, that does depend on what happened before, then you've got dependent, obviously. If you are taking something away and not replacing it, you have dependent. 2 things are completely separate of each other and have no impact on the other. You've got independent. Hopefully this helped out. If you have any questions, ask your teachers, or you can search for other videos on independent and dependent events, identifying them on YouTube.